Welcome to The Critique. We've got a fascinating document on the desk today. It's a draft text for health communication training, and it digs into this idea of emotional efficiency in older adults.
Right. Using those three anecdotes, Michael, James, and Liam.
Exactly. Using their stories to illustrate some pretty heavy clinical concepts. Allostatic load, behavioral mirroring. But I've read it a couple of times, and honestly, it feels like a draft at war with itself.
At war with itself is the perfect way to frame this.
So let's get into it.
Yeah, you have this high-level sort of physiological ambition, and it's just colliding with a very, very casual execution.
It is. And that collision, it starts before you even read a single sentence. I opened this file and I was expecting, a rigorous training manual for health educators.
Right.
And my immediate reaction was just confusion. I felt like I was looking at a social media caption or, a lifestyle blog.
It's the visual formatting.
It's the emojis.
It's all the emojis. You have these profound medical terms sitting right next to stethoscopes, laughing faces, little brains. It threw me off completely.
It creates immediate cognitive dissonance, doesn't it? And this is, I think, the first major hurdle we need to clear.
Yeah. The author is probably trying to be accessible or friendly, which is, a good goal.
Of course.
But when you're training professionals, the container creates an expectation for the content. And if the container looks like an Instagram post, the reader subconsciously prepares for light entertainment.
They switch off their critical brain.
They switch on their scrolling brain. Exactly.
And that's the danger. You see a laughing face emoji, and you assume the text next to it is a joke, or just a light aside. But here, that emoji is sitting next to a paragraph about cognitive decline and executive function. It feels like it's trivializing it. I found myself doubting the text's authority just because of the cartoons.
That is a completely natural reaction. And it's exactly why we need to strip this back. If I'm a clinician in training, I need to know the material I'm investing my time in respects the gravity of the subject.
Right.
The visuals are, they're writing checks that the science can't cash, simply because they look too cheap. So the feedback here is to let the text stand naked.
Okay.
Strip away every single emoji, header, and inline icon.
Every single one? Even the medicine is life heart at the end?
Especially that one. It feels like a greeting card. The humanity in this piece, and there is a lot of humanity, it needs to come from the writing itself, not the formatting.
Trust the content.
Exactly. Trust the content.
Okay, so let's workshop what replaces them. Right now, we have the section on Michael. He's the guy who says his relationship feels like night school.
Right.
And it's currently headlined by a laughing face and a brain emoji. So if we cut those, we're just left with a block of text. What's the signpost then?
We replace the cartoon with a clear, clinical frame, a strong subhead.
Okay.
So instead of a picture that says, "haha, thinking hard," we use text that says, "the clinical cost of relationship friction."
Or cognitive load in daily functioning.
Perfect. That shifts the tone instantly. It tells the student, we are about to learn a mechanism, not, here is a funny story.
It primes the reader.
It professionalizes the whole layout, so that when the anecdotes do show up, they serve as evidence, not entertainment.
Okay, speaking of those anecdotes, let's move to the core content. This is where I think the draft really shines, but it's also where it misses its biggest opportunity. The author has interviewed these three men, Michael, James, and Liam, and they've given these incredible, vivid metaphors. Michael with night school, Liam saying his relationship is like comfortable furniture.
You gold. You can't invent quotes that good.
You can't. As a reader, I loved them. They felt real.
But here's the problem. The text treats the metaphor as the conclusion. It quotes Michael saying, "I don't want my relationship to feel like night school," and then basically just says, "See? This is cognitive overload."
Right. It just jumps straight from the story to the label.
Without building the bridge.
It assumes the reader already makes that connection.
Right. It's the classic curse of knowledge. The author knows the science so well that they think the link between night school and allostatic load is just obvious. But for a student, it's not.
No.
The text leaves the mechanism implicit. It has to be explicit. We need to explain how the metaphor illustrates the physiology.
So, okay, let's take Michael. Night school. It implies effort, tiredness, studying after a long day. How do we turn that into a medical lesson without, ruining the charm of the quote?
We use the quote as a diagnostic entry point. We don't just say, this is cognitive overload. We explain the biological cost. Night school represents a drain on executive function.
Ah, okay.
It represents a sustained demand on the prefrontal cortex during hours when the brain should be recovering.
So the rewrite needs to connect the feeling to the fuel.
Exactly. A concrete rewrite could be something like, Michael's resistance to night school dynamics is a layperson's articulation of preserving cognitive reserve.
I like that.
And then add, in older adults, avoiding this specific type of complex emotional processing is a protective mechanism for mental energy.
Protective mechanism. That phrase changes everything. It changes Michael from just a grumpy old guy who doesn't want to work on his relationship
Right.
into a biological organism trying to conserve energy.
And that is the shift clinicians need to make. They need to stop seeing personality quirks and start seeing physiological strategies.
Okay, let's apply that same lens to Liam. I loved his line. You don't brag about comfortable furniture, but your body thinks you.
It's a great line.
The text currently calls this emotional ergonomics, which is a clever phrase, by the way. I do like emotional ergonomics.
It is clever, but again, it stays in the realm of philosophy. Ergonomics implies fit and comfort. But why does the body thank him? What is the body actually doing or not doing in that state?
It leaves it at reducing strain.
We need to get more granular.
So we need to bring in the cardiovascular element here?
Yes, we need to say that this comfortable furniture state correlates to lower baseline cortisol levels and reduced inflammatory markers.
Okay.
We need to write a sentence that says, this lack of strain directly correlates to lower allostatic load on the cardiovascular system.
That turns the anecdote into data.
Exactly.
Comfortable furniture isn't just a nice sentiment. It's a description of a specific physiological state where the body isn't fighting itself.
Exactly. Now the student understands that when a patient says, oh, we're like old furniture, they're actually reporting on their cardiovascular risk profile. That is a massive upgrade in educational value.
Okay, moving on to the third subject, James from England. This section felt the most, heartwarming, I guess, but also the least clinical. James mentions that it's easier to take his medication because his wife is taking hers at the same time. The text calls this the mirroring effect and notes that it's well documented, and then it just moves on.
Yeah.
It felt like a chicken soup for the soul moment.
That is the perfect description. It reads like a nice observation about companionship. But in a training document, nice is not enough. Nice doesn't improve patient outcomes.
No.
The weakness here is passivity. The text treats this mirroring as an interesting factoid. Look, they copy each other, rather than as a tool.
It leaves the so what on the table.
Completely. If I'm a health educator reading this, I think, oh, that's sweet. I don't think, I need to change how I do my job.
Right.
We need to convert this passive observation into an active teaching strategy.
So how do we operationalize a story about a couple taking pills together?
We shift the framing from observation to application. The text needs to instruct the educator to look for this, to introduce the concept of dyadic health behaviors.
Mirroring is well documented. It should say something like, for the health educator, James's comment suggests that adherence strategies should be dyadic rather than individual.
That's a powerful pivot. You're telling the clinician, when you're counseling a patient on medication adherence, you are wasting your time if you only talk to the patient.
Exactly. You need to assess the partner's routine.
You have to see if there's a mirror to use.
Yes. If the partner has a chaotic routine, your patient's adherence will likely drop. If the partner is regimented, you can piggyback on that.
We need to frame James's routine not as a cute story, but as a compliance asset.
Compliance asset? That is such a strong term.
It is. It takes all the sentimentality out of it and makes it a resource. Here is a tool I can use to keep this patient alive.
And that's the theme we keep coming back to with this draft. The author has these wonderful human elements, but they haven't sharpened them into clinical instruments yet.
Which brings us to the ending, the conclusion of the draft. It returns to that poetic, almost literary style. It talks about choices that feel light, stable, and easy to carry. It's beautifully written, honestly. I enjoyed reading it just as a piece of prose. But as I was reading it, I kept wondering, can a doctor prescribe lightness?
You hit the nail on the head. The rhetorical focus here drifts away from health education and into lifestyle philosophy. It's subjective.
Yeah.
If a patient tells me their relationship feels light, that's great. But how do I measure that? How do I teach a student to value that? The risk is that the reader just dismisses the conclusion as fluff or good vibes, not a clinical goal.
But we don't want to just delete it, right? Because that emotional resonance is what makes the text readable. We don't want to turn this into a dry spec sheet.
No, absolutely not. The poetry is the hook, but we need to anchor the hook.
Okay.
We need to validate the poetry with evidence-based practice. We have to bridge the subjective feeling of lightness with the objective reality of health outcomes.
So how do we rewrite that final paragraph to keep the beauty but add the weight?
We keep the line about choices that feel light, but we immediately follow it with a sentence that validates ease as a clinical metric. We could write, therefore, subjective reports of ease in a relationship should be treated by clinicians not as casual conversation, but as valid qualitative data regarding a patient's long-term health outlook.
That validates the patient's experience. It says your feeling of lightness is actually data that I am recording.
Precisely. And we can do the same with the concept of avoidance. The text mentions people rejecting relationships because they're too much trouble.
Right.
Usually, we see social withdrawal as a bad thing in aging, a sign of depression or isolation.
Yeah, we're taught that engagement is good, isolation is bad.
But in this context, the withdrawal is a survival strategy. We need to give the educator a prompt to reframe that. We should add a sentence like, when a patient rejects a difficult relationship, we must learn to code this not as social withdrawal, but as allostatic preservation.
Allostatic preservation. That completely flips the script. The patient isn't being grumpy, they are defending their biological baseline.
It respects the patient's agency. It says, I see you protecting your energy, and I recognize that as a health behavior.
That is a powerful note to end on.
It is. It brings the whole document full circle, from the night school metaphor all the way to the lightness at the end. It's all about energy conservation.
It really unifies the whole piece. It turns a collection of stories into a coherent argument about biological energy.
And that's what makes a great training text. It gives the reader a new lens to see the world.
So looking at the big picture here, the author has done the hard work of gathering the raw material. The anecdotes are excellent, the visual metaphors are there.
For sure.
The structural problem is simply that the text is stopping short. It's presenting the evidence, but not making the closing argument.
It's about 80% heart and 20% science right now. We need to shift that balance. Not by removing the heart, because that's what makes it engaging, but by making the heart serve the science.
Okay, let's just recap the specific marching orders for the rewrite so the listener has a clear checklist.
Sure. First, the visuals. Professionalize the format. Kill the emojis. Use headers that signal clinical learning objective, not fun story.
Second, the metaphors. Don't assume the reader connects night school to executive function. Write the sentence that makes that connection explicit. Define the mechanism.
Third, James and the mirroring. Move from passive observation to active strategy. Frame the partner's behavior as a compliance asset and a dyadic tool for adherence.
And finally, the conclusion. Don't let the poetry float away. Anchor lightness and ease as valid qualitative data points. Validate the subjective experience with clinical terminology.
If the author does those 4 things, this won't just be a nice blog post. It'll be a transformative piece of educational material.
It's exciting because the potential is so clearly there. It just needs that layer of rigorous translation.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the next draft. It's a great example of how you can take these soft stories and turn them into hard science, if you just frame them correctly.
Absolutely. To our listener, take these lenses, visual rigor, explicit mechanism, active application, and clinical grounding, and apply them to your text. You have the gold. Now you just need to refine it. Submit the next draft once you've made those bridges, and we'll take another look.
Can't wait.
That's it for this critique. Now get to editing.